Hey gals, I'm so excited to be back doing Ruth again with you. And if you haven't listened to our previous devotions, give them a listen to, because we are jumping right into chapter 1, verse 6. And it says, Then Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had blessed his people in Judah by giving them good crops again. So Naomi and her daughters-in-law got ready to leave Moab to return to her homeland. With her two daughters-in-law, she had set out from a place where she had been living, and they took the road that would lead them back to Judah. One of the things we have to understand is that for Naomi, this is kind of a walk of shame. She left Judah when the famine had come upon the land. And if we remember when we talked about this idea of the book of Judges and previous devotions, that God would allow his judgment or hard things to come upon the land so the people would cry out to him when they were kind of going awry in their ways. And then when they would cry out to the Lord and get their lives right back on track, the Lord would pull back the judgment and he would release his blessings. And Naomi, when she was supposed to cry out to the Lord, her and Elimelech left Judah. Instead of crying out to the Lord, they went to Moab, where the food was plentiful and they didn't need God. They went to a land that didn't believe in God. And how you can relate to that today, they went into the world. And here she is having to make this walk of shame back to Judah without a husband, without her two sons. Why? Why didn't she just stay in Moab with her two daughters-in-law? Well, this is a male-dominated society. Women could not own land. They could not work. They couldn't own a house. They couldn't do anything without the men. If you were in a family unit and you lost your husband and you lost your sons, you would have a brother or a brother-in-law. And if you didn't have that, in the Jewish society, you would have something called a kinsman redeemer, which we're definitely going to be talking about in the devotions to come. But in Moab, they didn't have those same customs that the Israelite nation that God had put in place to protect them. So here she is, a foreigner, and at that, now a widow, and she has nothing. She cannot even provide for herself. So she literally has no choice but to walk back to Judah, the place where she left. And assuming here that it is true, like that there's good crops and there's plentiful, then we can also assume that the people of Judah did exactly what God wanted them to do. And they cried out to the Lord. And through this period of these 10 plus years, the Lord restored them. He pulled back the judgment and he let his blessings flow because their food is now plentiful in Judah. And it makes you wonder if perhaps Naomi thought, if I go back to Judah, can this same restoration be in place for me? The book is called Ruth, but we're going to see that much of the story is about a woman named Naomi whose heart became very hardened to the Lord. She wasn't sure if she really believed in the restoration, in the redemption, and the blessings of the Lord. And maybe you and I can sit there and be in the same woman's two shoes. Oftentimes when we walk away from the Lord for this, maybe it's a short 6-month period, right? Where we just get out of going to church and we stop reading our Bible and he just feels distant, right? It's easy for us to go, well, of course I could just walk back into his arms. Of course there's redemption. Of course he wants to restore me. I truly believe that God's favor can be restored. I could just walk right back in. But then there's those times, and maybe it's not for you personally, but it's somebody you know. Or maybe this is for you, where we have been outside of the kingdom of God for many years, maybe 10 plus years, like Naomi here. And that question becomes a lot bigger. Can God's favor really be restored? And one of the beautiful things about the story of Ruth and Naomi that we're going to be digging in the devotions to come is the answer is yes. That we're going to see that God pursues her heavily, not just Ruth, but pursues Naomi heavily because he is trying to prove to her as she makes this decision to come home. And I end with this. These were hard steps for Naomi to take. It literally says, they took the road that would lead them back to Judah. I believe that's in there intentionally because this wasn't like, oh yeah, let's just go get some food in Judah. But this was a road that was hard to take for Naomi. She would be walking into town without her husband, without her sons, and also with some daughters-in-law that, by the way, Israelites were not supposed to marry Moabites, and she would be walking in with 2 Moabites, a direct showing of her disobedience against the Lord. This is not going to be an easy walk, but she is choosing to take the first steps. Sometimes we just have to choose to make the first steps, no matter how hard they are. And just as God is going to come out and meet Naomi the moment she comes into town, or even on this journey that we're going to see next time. I love the next part. Don't miss the next devotion. We're going to see God pursue her and promise her that restoration can happen no matter how long you have been away from the Lord. It's going to keep getting better, so we hope you keep joining us. We love you guys.